Hi, good morning everyone. It's Julia from Crosspatch. Finally, we have got the Octaflower templates. Although I say finally we've got them, the current stock is sold out, but there's more on the go with Handy Andy, and I'm picking them up in 2 weeks' time. So if you're in this country and you want them, they are on my website. Just send me a message and say, can I be put onto the back order list? So the Octaflowers are a set of flowers, and you can also, there's an opportunity, you can buy this little square ruler which makes the squares in between the Octaflowers, which will come apparent in a minute, but I'm sure you're all capable of cutting 1.5, 2.5, 3.5 inch squares anyway. So your template set is a set of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flowers from 1 inch up to 3 inch. Okay, on each flower you can see there's a little indentation in the corner, which is where you mark the fabric, just so that you can make your octagons. So all the octagons are a line in between each point on the flower. So if I bring it up to the camera, hopefully you can see that a bit better. Okay. This is very similar to how we made the hexiflowers, same kind of principle, but they go together differently, obviously, because they're octagons. So if I show you quickly what you can make, and you get the patterns for all of these in with your set. You can also buy the pattern for this. This is the Octaflower template holder folder. So I've got the little baby 1 inch Octaflowers on the front. I've used the flowers, the bigger flowers, as a plique on the back, and there's just like room in here, so you can put your Octaflowers in one side and maybe your fabric or patterns in the other side, so they fit nicely in there. So you can buy this on its own with the little baby Octaflower. That comes on its own if you want to have a go. So that's one project that comes in with your destructions. Another project that comes with the templates is the Octaflower tote bag. Also the Octaflower table mat, or you can make it into a quilt if you've got the patience to make it bigger. So that's using the biggest template. And there's also patterns I made the cushions. So here's the cushions. So there's my Mr. Skirrel cushion, and also the birdie cushion. Okay. So on my website there is a downloadable template for the 2 inch Octaflower. So if you want to make the tote bag, it's just a bog standard tote bag, and these are just appliqued on the front of your panel. If you want to have a go at making this, there is a template for your Octaflowers, and there's also a downloadable template for the scrappy patch. There's a separate YouTube video on how to do scrappy patch, but we'll go over it briefly today as well. Okay. So there's 2 ways of the Octaflower. So if I show you on the cushions, this is using 2 bits of fabric for each Octaflower, and this is what I call the raw edge one. There's just 1 piece of fabric for your Octaflower. Okay, so if we go through how we do that, and I'm going to bring you down to my level. I have got plans in action for getting more cameras and get myself actually sorted out properly, so I don't have to do all this palaver, but we'll get there hopefully after Christmas. Right, so if you're using 2 pieces of fabric, choose the template size you want, and obviously cut out 2 flowers. Now if you draw around the edge of the flower, hang on, let's put it the right way around, draw around the edge of the flower and then add a seam allowance, and you're going to stitch on the actual drawn line. Okay, and then you're just going to cut a little slit in the middle of one side, so you can turn it right sides out, so it'll end up looking like that. So there's your little slit in the middle. Okay, so as I say before, you can use your, let's grab out the right size. I think this was a 2 inch one. Let's grab the 2 inch one out. You can use your bigger print fabrics and fussy cut them. So this one, yeah, it is a 2 inch one. So I've put my flower over the image I want, and then I've marked with a pen just in each corner of where the petals go in of the flower. If you've got the templates, there's a little notch in there you can get your pen in, and then just drawn a line in between each one, so I can fussy cut out my bird to go in the middle of my octaflower. So I'm going to end up with him. I've got blackbird on this one. He'll go in the middle of my octaflower, and I'll just fold over the petals and top stitch him. Now I've done all of mine apart from the little baby one on the sewing machine. So here's one I've done. I've done that one in raw edge, and the one on the cushion, I think I prefer the raw edge look. The one in the cushion is with 2 pieces of fabric, so I call that the smooth edge version. And this I've just used 1 piece of fabric, that's a raw edge version. So obviously when you sew these together, you're going to end up, by the time I've joined 4 together, you've got that square in the middle that you need to fill. So to fill that square, you measure that side, so this is a 2-inch one, you need to cut 2.5-inch squares of fabric. So if you want to get the ruler to help you, you can, but obviously everyone's more than capable of just cutting 2.5-inch squares. So I've cut 2.5-inch squares. I put plain fabric is on the back, and then I've got a pattern fabric that's going to come on the front, and then I've cut a 2-inch square of H630 wadding to go in the middle, so that I'll just sew around the edge of the actual wadding, and then round 3 and a bit sides, and then turn it right sides out, and you'll end up with your little bit that's going to go in the middle. So that is just going to be sewn. If you've got the cushion and you've got 4 squares, that'll just be sewn in the middle. Now when you sew them together, all I do is use an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So if I can show you on this bit, I've made a little needle book. I've just used an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance on there and sewn them together. So say if you're making the tote bag, you want 3 of these. So if you want to put something in the middle, we'll come to that in a minute, you're going to have to then sew the squares in the middle, but they go together really easily. So just sew your row of octagons together and then add in your squares in the middle, and then do the next row on top. Okay? And as I say, just an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, all done on the machine. This is a raw edge one, all done on the machine. On the cushions I decided to leave, I thought it looked a bit odd just leaving a gap here, so I put those on the outside as well. Put a little square there, and then I've just top stitched this to some fabric. I fused the cushion fabric to a square of H630 again, and then I've top stitched this on top. So I've top stitched all around the outside edge, and then just around the square in the middle on the cushions. And again with Mr. Squirrel here, same idea. Okay, on the bag I didn't bother to put the squares in the middle. So say this is part of your bag, I've just picked a nice floral fabric, and I've just done a set of 9 octaflowers, and I've put them on top of the fabric and tried to place them so that when I top stitch them, there's a nice flower appearing where possible in that little square. So it saves making the square, so it makes it much quicker to make up. So as you can see, that was my background fabric. Here's the bag. I've made up 9 octaflowers, sewn them together, but I haven't added the squares in the middle. So all I've done, again, I've fused the background fabric to some wadding, some H630 or H640. I've top stitched all around the edge of the octaflowers, and then I've top stitched round the squares in the middle. So it actually looks like I've added squares, but I haven't. It's just the fabric behind. So this applies to everything. I would say, apart from if you're making a quilt. This is the biggest size, so this is the 3-inch size. So I've used the big print, a fussy cut 1 fabric. I've used all the big flowers for the big octaflowers, and then I've sort of fussy cut some of the smaller flowers from the print to do the squares in the middle. Again, this is just the raw edge method. I've just used a blanket stitch on my banana, and the measurements on that are 3, so 3 width and 3 depth. And if I show you the back, you can see how they go together on the back. Okay. If you don't like seeing the back, you could obviously put applique this onto a piece of fleece or something if you want to make a nice cozy quilt. For the little baby one, so if you want to make this, cut, I think it was a 12-inch square, let me just double check before I mislead you. Yeah, 12.5-inch square of linen, fuse it to some wadding, make up 9 little baby hexaflowers, octaflowers. And again, I fussy cut the little beehives for the squares in the middle, but obviously you could leave them blank and then maybe you could just put a little bit of stitchery in the middle. You don't have to put the little squares in if you don't want to. So I've appliqued them to the front, and I've done these ones by hand, okay? I just found it easier to do these by hand. The back, again, another, you can either cut 2 12.5-inch squares, or you can cut a 12.5-inch by 25-inch piece of linen if you want the same fabric on the back. And I've just appliqued some of the Octaflowers, one on top of each other on the back. A hint, if you're using heat and bond, just when you trace onto heat and bond or Bonder web, cut out the middle, because by the time you've got 3 lots of heat and bond on top of each other, you'll kill your fingers trying to stitch them down if you're doing it by hand. Okay. On the inside, I've just used some of my packs of 2.5-inch squares to make pockets. So 2 pockets, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, yeah, 15 squares for each pocket. And the lining again is just linen. So as I say, the pattern for this comes with your Octaflowers. So that's a really simple one to do. I've bound it, you don't have to bind it. You could have just put right sides together and turned them out and top stitched around the edge. You don't have to put binding on, and a self cover button on there. So that will fit your Octaflower set in. Another thing quickly that I'll just explain to you, there is a downloadable template if you want to make Octaflowers with scrappy patches in the middle, like I've done here. The template for the scrappy patches are on the website on downloadable patterns. And very briefly, let's show you. So you will cut out your fabrics. This is what the templates look like. So you simply, each template is initialed, so you'll see on the download. So that's A and B at the top. You will sew A and B together and then attach E. You will sew C and D together and attach them to those. So I've got each step here. I can show you. So here you go. So that was the A and B, which will be sewn to the E. And that's the C and D there. And when you've sewn them together, they will look like, let's get another piece of white paper. They will look like this. Okay. So if you just take your template, put it on top of your scrappy patch, and then mark where you want your octagon to be on each corner, and you'll end up with that. So that will just go in the middle of your flower. If you're doing the raw edge, obviously you don't need to add an extra seam allowance, because you're just going to draw around the flower, cut on that line, and you're just going to fold it over and buttonhole stitch it down. Okay, so that's how I did for the bag. Obviously you can just use plain fabric if you want. It's entirely up to you. Okay, so they're really simple to use. Hopefully you enjoy using them. I'll just bring you back up and I'll show you, just go through once more what you get in the pack. So you don't get the square in the pack. The square is something different. If they're out of stock on my website, they're on Handy Andy Crafty UK website. So you get the pattern, loads and loads of photos in the pattern for this bag. It also tells you how to make the zip as well. There's a separate YouTube demo on how I make the zips. Okay, so it gives you everything, how to make the bag and how to make the little needle book that goes with it. How to make, obviously, this that we've just gone through, how to make the quilt, and how to make the cushions. So you get all that with your templates. Okay, there we go, and Mr. Squirrel cushion there. After this I'm going to move on to Christmas. So the next demo I do, I'm going to do the little gift bags. I'll just show you what else I've been making this week. So, I'll also do a demo for this, but I need to prepare one to show you how I put it together. There's a pattern for this sewing satchel already, but I did it before with just plain fabric. So this is a really good jelly roll one. So this is just jelly roll strips, plus a bit of linen for the lining. And then if you've got some stitcheries, I've just added one of my stitcheries on the front. So you can add any stitcheries. I'm going to make another one out of some Tilda fabric and then put a completely different, I've got little stitchery already made up to go on the front of that. And remember the panels we had, the Three Sisters Moda panels. So me and the elf sat and made a tote bag, but we had a load of vintage lace and little scraps of fabric, and we decided we were going to pimp our tote bags. So that's a bit of great grandma's lace. This is out of the Soph vintage pack that Sarah got me, the elf, got me at the NEC at the Festival of Quilts, and this is out of the vintage pack as well. And then I've done a bit of stitching on there, and I've done a bit of stitching around the butterfly. So that was the last thing I made. So this was from this panel here. I've still got some of these left, the Moda Three Sisters panel. So that was just the panel that I just quilted to go on my coffee table, but I decided to make the bag as well. So that's as much as I've done this week, because it was a mad panic. Andy phoned me and said, I'm coming down with your templates, so I had to get everything ready to do a live with the templates. So that's it for this week. If you're in America and you're in this horrendous weather, I wish you well, and hopefully things will get better soon. We had horrendous wind and rain last night, and it's very drizzly whizzly this morning. They said something about Hurricane Kirk was coming, but I think he's missing us. So I'm going to go away and get on with Christmas bits and pieces, and I'll be back with you soon. Have a nice Sunday. Bye.